Time to take a look at what's making news around the world, and for that I'm joined here in the studio by Alison Sargent, who's been scanning the internet to see what's been making headlines. And we're starting in the US with reactions to that announcement that Donald Trump is declaring a state of emergency in order to get funding for that border wall.
That's right, Annette. This is because, of course, the funding that Donald Trump wanted for his border wall was not included in the New Deal agreed by lawmakers to avoid seeing a second government shutdown. The press is interpreting Donald Trump's declaration of emergency really as the president lashing out after a defeat. We see that in this cartoon here from Louisiana paper The Advocate. Donald Trump is doing some literal border fencing with Democrats, and he has come out of it looking pretty shredded up, as you can see. Left-leaning paper The Washington Post writes in their editorial today that the presidency has entered a new imperial phase, with Trump using an autocratic technique to get around his legislative branch. And the paper calls out specifically Republican Senate leader Mitch McConnell for letting all of this happen.
Indeed, McConnell and other Republican leaders reportedly urged the president not to declare an emergency.
Right, that's really the main mainstream conservative Republican stance, and it's being echoed in the conservative press today. Papers say that if Donald Trump wins the likely legal battle to impose this state of emergency, well, it could set a precedent that Democrats could eventually use in the future. Notably, Democrats could impose regulations on guns, for example, since gun violence is something that could easily be qualified as a national emergency. So for the conservative National Review, this is a Trump declaration that Republicans are definitely going to come to regret.
Moving to the UK, and newspapers there are reacting to a plea from a pregnant Jihadi bride that she wants to come back to the UK.
Right, her face is on the front pages of many of the UK's papers today. Her name is Shamima Begum. She's just 19 years old. She was one of a group of girls from East London who became famous for leaving for Syria in 2015. They were known as the Bethnal Green Girls. A journalist from the Times tracked her down at a refugee camp in Syria. She told him in an interview that she wants to return home now. The UK's Home Secretary, though, has said he will do everything he can to prevent her from coming back. As with other jihadi brides we've seen interviewed, Begum said that she has no regrets about going to Syria. The reason she wants to go back to the UK now is to have her baby with the NHS, the National Health Service. She may just be 19, but she already had 2 other children in Syria who both died due to poor medical care there.
And not surprisingly, many British newspapers are not reacting too well to her plea, particularly on the right end of the politics.
Right, it's really hard for many people to overlook the barbarity that she was a part of during her time in Syria. Times cartoonist Peter Brooks captures these feelings in this cartoon. We see her clothes here are soaked in blood as she asks to lead a quiet life from now on. Right-wing tabloid The Sun establishes their stance pretty clearly on their front page today. They write, "No regrets, no remorse, no entry." Some papers, though, think Begum should be given the right to return. The Guardian has an editorial today saying that she should come back and face the consequences for having left. The paper says that while her remarks are horrifying, really, we don't know what exactly role she played during her 4 years with the Islamic State group. More importantly, The Guardian writes that the UK has a responsibility to assist all British children, and that includes Begum's unborn child.
And moving now to France, where students are gearing up for a day of protest, calling for action against climate change.
Right, these protests have really been gaining steam. They've been going on since the fall, actually. Students all over Europe walking out of class to demand action on climate change. It was mainly students in Scandinavia and Belgium to start, but this Friday, French and British students will be missing class to protest for the first time. Libération has dedicated their front page to the movement with a play on words here, les jeunes poussent, which means both the youth are growing up and the youth are pushing back, putting on the pressure. Catholic paper La Croix, meanwhile, writes that the French youth are finally entering the resistance. They plan to strike every Friday until March 15th, when they are calling for a nationwide climate strike.
And in other French protest news, it's Friday, which of course means we're looking at yet another weekend of yellow vest protests. Alison.
That's right, Annette. Are you tired of them yet?
Maybe.
Right, so if you are tired of them, you're not alone. Today, Aujourd'hui en France says that people have really had enough. Their headline here reads, "The fed-up feeling is growing." The paper says that for the first time, actually, a majority of French people want to see the protests stop. 56% of them, according to a survey that came out out this week. Still, that same survey finds that 58% of French people continue to support or have sympathy for the Yellow Vests. So mixed feelings over that movement continue.
And finally, we're going to be ending on a lighter note, and fans of the film Frozen are hoping that the film's sequel will confirm that Elsa is indeed Disney's first ever lesbian princess.
That's right. Ever since the film Frozen came out, actually, there's been speculation that Princess Elsa is possibly gay. She's actually become somewhat of an LGBT icon. Now, the trailer for Frozen 2 was released on Thursday. It briefly shows what appears to be a new female character. This caused many fans to speculate that she will become Elsa's love interest. That said, many also have been speculating that the character is in fact the princess's mother, as seen in a flashback. I did watch the trailer, and I have to say that that probably is a more likely hypothesis, although that does not mean that Elsa is not a lesbian.
Okay, on that note, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, Alison. And if you want to take a look at the stories that Alison's been talking about, you can, of course, head to our website, that being France24.com.